I should be nervous. All right, Steve Hackett fans, unite. Tonight's episode is going to show us the highs and the lows of Steve Hackett's journey. And I think by the end of this episode, we'll have like no question anymore as to why he made the decision after this album and after this tour to leave the band. I'm kind of kicking it off this way because there are just a ton of Steve Hackett fans out there, and people get really passionate about their Steve Hackett. I want to make sure everybody kind of knows that there's a trigger warning here. We're going to talk about the things that he did really great and the things that kind of got away from him when we talk about the two songs we're going to cover tonight. Jake, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great, my brother. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for this episode. I love both of these songs very, 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 very much. We're going to cover, of course, Blood on the Rooftops and Wot Gorilla. Blood on the Rooftops is a Steve Hackett composition with Phil Collins. So the two main composers of the song, Hackett and Collins. According to Hackett, Collins just had this kind of this lyric of Blood on the Rooftops, and then Hackett just filled in the rest. And then we've got the kind of acid jazz fusion Wot Gorilla that is right in the wheelhouse of what Phil Collins was doing with Brand X at this point in time, and is certainly a very fun song on side one of this album. But interestingly, was chosen above a Steve Hackett composition to be placed on the album. And so that's where we really get the highs and the lows. So the high is Steve Hackett kind of contributing the writing credits on Blood on the Rooftops, which we're going to dissect here together, and then getting kind of shunned on Wot Gorilla. And it turns out even when they went in to mix Wot Gorilla, they kind of mixed the guitar down a little bit as well. So a little bit of insult to injury. But that's just me kind of geeking out on these two songs. I think I texted you, I think yesterday, and said, let's cover these songs. So what have you been thinking about over the last 24, 48 hours when it comes to these?
No, I thought that was an interesting set of songs. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, in terms of the story of Steve Hackett on Wind and Wuthering, these pretty much tell it, particularly, the long-told tale of Wot Gorilla. What stands out to me, though, and maybe missed in the cracks here, is that Phil Collins has the other writing credit on both of these songs, right?
Yep.
So here's Phil, right, creeping in on the outside.
Yep. That's right. That's exactly right.
Swiping some songs here, which is, I think really important. Not only is he stepping up as a musician, and certainly, Wot Gorilla is when I hear this, my mind instantly goes really more to Weather Report than Brand X, but
yeah,
that's only because I'm more familiar, I think, with Weather Report, or they're the first place in the memory slot, which is interesting, right? Because the song really is about, or aside from being a instrumental track, it's about Chester Thompson, right? His nickname is Gorilla from his days with Frank Zappa. Apparently he got that name, and it's known in the music world from. And it was the song Florentine Poignant that his nickname is mentioned. I think it's something along the lines of Chester's Gorilla, or something like that. And anyway, the name stuck, and Wot Gorilla is apparently a reference to Chester Thompson, who, as we know, has been filling in for Phil on the road as the touring drummer. But he's an all-around cool guy, right? I mean, he's in Weather Report. I think naturally Phil Collins is a big Weather Report fan, and so he's, I think, kind of naturally drawn to Chester. So, it makes sense that they would write this song, but it is kind of a weird one to trump what is otherwise a much more intricate song from Steve Hackett. And I say that only in the sense that this is kind of a pure acid jazz song. I mean, it's Weather Report, it's Brand X. It plays way more those guys than it does Genesis, right? So to check this one in, there must have been a jolly good reason.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the reason is that I think Phil Collins kind of strikes again on the reasoning. So the song that Steve Hackett brought to the group to put on Wind and Wuthering was "Please Don't Touch," which went on to become one of the songs off of his solo album of the same title from January of 1978. So he didn't waste much time kind of reusing the session pieces that he took to Genesis. But "Please Don't Touch" was a groove that we'll listen to after we listen to Wot Gorilla. But Phil Collins actually said he just couldn't quite find the right groove for it. And, given the choice between the two, he seemed to have a lot to say about it. And so he was even though they were really great writing buddies, they joined the band around the same time. This was one where Phil got the ultimate vote and Steve didn't get his way. But we'll listen to "Please Don't Touch" towards the end after we hear Wot Gorilla. So you'll get to compare the two and understand if maybe Phil was right about not being able to quite find the right groove for that song. But let's talk "Blood on the Rooftops," because this is just one of my absolute all-time favorite Genesis songs. I really feel like it catches the mood of this album so well. When we think about the like, this takes me immediately to fall/winter. There's a chill in the air. We're gonna be bundled up inside. We're gonna watch some TV. We're gonna avoid the bad things that are on TV, and we're gonna watch the things that are just gratifying to us. We're gonna stave off our boredom with whatever is flickering on the television. And in a lot of ways, I mean, this is one of the most beautiful political songs that is out there. And we have Hackett and Collins to thank for this one coming together.
Yeah. It's definitely a late 70s, political song. It kind of, what sparks in my head, Jared, is Lives in the Balance, right?
Yeah.
Which is going to come
Yeah.
many years later, but it's that kind of political song that's told through the eyes of really a person's reaction to being numb to the news, right? You've got this world news stream that's just coming at you. All the references to the BBC,
Yep.
The Jews and Arabs, certainly a big kerfuffle going on there in
You don't say.
75, 76. And, just the casual references to these things, coupled with what I would consider classic British response to tragedy, or to antagonism, or whatever the word is here. But it's ultimately stiff upper lip. Let's make a cup of tea and think of the happier times.
Yeah.
And so it's a dark song in a lot of ways lyrically, but it's put to you with this beautiful classical guitar intro, which, to be fair, gonna maybe anger some folks here, Steve Hackett plays beautifully. he does it in a very clean classical style. And it's at this point that you understand, the dynamic range. But he's not Andres Segovia. And it shows a little. So, for what it's worth. But it's wonderful to hear him extend into that. I mean, I don't think we've heard a nylon string guitar at all on any Genesis album leading up to this point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but nothing is jumping out.
What do you mean nylon string? Like, I'm not even...
So he's this intro is played on a classical guitar, which uses traditionally the ancient guitars in the 17th century would have used gut strings, so strings wound from an animal's gut lining, which gives a nice organic sound. The nylon string replaced that because ew, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And it has that same soft sound. So nylon string guitars or classical guitars are they have a noted softer approach, and you'll hear it in that intro. It's definitely not a steel string guitar, which is the opposite or the modern equivalent. What most of us play today in rock music, if we're playing an acoustic guitar, it's a steel string. If it's electric, it's definitely a steel string. To be fair, there are some electric nylon string guitars. But this one is a nice, beautiful, classical guitar intro. And it has all the hallmarks of just that, of the classical style. His finger picking, his role. As a matter of fact, there's a touch of that Spanish Segovian approach. But again, it's not Hackett's strong suit when it comes to guitar. So this is a nice, again, just a nice, well performed. It's a very solid performance. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah, well, let's listen to it, and we'll get into the whole song and make our commentary as per the usual.
Right there, that little bit of hesitance in his playing, that's what I'd like to see smoothed out.
Okay, all right, we're
Right
giving
there,
notes.
you hear it?
We're giving notes.
We are.
I love it.
I had to listen to a lot of this stuff. Right there, just move into that a little bit more smoothly. But it's beautiful.
I just think this is an overwhelmingly forgotten classic Genesis song. That's what I love about it.
I love this part.
Dark and grey, an English film, the Wednesday play.
And this whole album is dark and gray, right?
Yeah. Well, that's an important note, really. Our previous album, we seem to be skipping back and forth between American albums and British albums.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is definitely a British album.
Yeah.
But Trick of the Tail definitely, with Squonk, a tale from the northern woods
Yeah.
where the lumberjacks are. That's not British. The orchestration on this is also noteworthy. Just the way the song is put together.
Tony comes in there with some nice atmosphere setting.
Mm-hmm. And I think, again, that's our old friend, the Mellotron, providing our string backing.
Let's hit the news, boy. I'll make some tea.
classic English reference of, the stiff upper lip. Let's make some tea and talk about happier times.
This holds up so well. This is like ahead of its time, right?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, it's 2026, and like now we're in this 24-hour constant news cycle, and we're just looking for ways to break away from it. And that's what this song is all about. Before the 24-hour news cycle even started.
That's, yeah.
I love the foreshadowing there with Phil Collins' career. The little Tarzan shout out.
Yeah. How about that? And again, there's Tony Banks on this like oboe sounding patch on the ARP Pro Soloist. And you have to, is that Peter's voice? So dreamy. This to me is really ahead of its time. This is 6 or 7 years ahead of its time.
Totally. Getting all their BBC news from around the globe. The trouble was started by Errol Flynn. I love that part too, like better in my day, like
yeah, it's the Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
Right? I remember. Take the boys out of school, but you can't take the school out of the boys.
Oh, Helen of Troy making appearances on the last 2 albums now. My favorite line in the whole song though is when it is about like basically this is great to be able to just sit here and watch TV, because back in our day when we got bored we just started a world war. Like, I mean that's just so politically like in your face and so great. And I mean these are Hackett lyrics with the exception of the hook of Blood on the Rooftops, which came from Collins. But it's just so pure English and so enjoyable and so listenable over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
I think that's what I love about it. And it just comes in this point in this album. I mean, it's a B-side kind of buried on the second side of the album, between the epic Tony Banks story of all in a Mouse's Night and then the Afterglow suite, right? So, which I've just started calling the Afterglow suite. I know there's a lot more to what goes on in the names of those songs, but it's just how I refer to it. And it just sets this tone for the whole back half of the album, the whole spirit of the album, the dark and gray, the cold and gray, but just this is the first in a long line of what will ultimately become, Genesis kind of becoming a bit political, right? Talking about how they feel about things, but this one I think is really interesting, and it just really speaks to what we're dealing with today, where there's this constant news cycle. There's this need for kind of comfort that we all find in either our entertainment, our favorite movies, favorite actors, favorite music, and favorite tea. And so, a little bit of escapism, if you will, because God forbid we didn't escape from it, we become part of it and we start world wars as a result. So just, I could just go on and on and on about Blood on the Rooftops and how great of a tune it is.
Yeah, and just the title itself is the shock factor, right? The idea that that Blood on the Rooftops is so interesting or enthralling. It's it's disgusting, it's grotesque, it's intriguing, it sells.
Yeah.
And that's the part that gives me just those Jackson Browne vibes.
Totally.
With this song. It's
Totally.
just the idea that here we are, it's the decline of Western civilization through our innovation and malaise.
I was listening to Domino today, and there's the line in Domino about what a terrible thing to see on TV. If we get lucky, we'll see it again.
Right.
And I mean, it's just such a great line. It's like, and when you think about how that plays into Blood on the Rooftops, I mean, that's exactly, I think, the spirit of what they're trying to convey here too, is that we're just so into this constant news cycle, and the grosser, the better, the more clicks you can get, the better, the more pushed out, the more provocative, the better. And this was just a way in late 1976 to show the future, what was coming. And here we are.
Yeah, well, or, to tell the tale of, a world that's always on fire and always has been. Maybe it's more a statement of a place and time, and that statement just hasn't changed that much. You might be able to find something by Ptolemy that it's blood on the tiles.
The roof tile. Blood on the roof tiles. At least it's not blood on the chimney pots, like they say. The chimney pots. All right. So, Wot Gorilla is, I'm curious, because again, you just have a better connection to British stuff than I do, but the spelling of the word what is, I first became familiar with that, with the W-O-T, as part of, a Pink Floyd song. Like it's called "Hey, What's the Deal?" W-O-T, What's the Deal? And it's a song that David Gilmour has kind of reinstated into a lot of his solo live concerts. And I've gone back and listened to it a number of times and just really love it. But what's the deal with what? Do you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty typical spelling or vernacular spelling for the Cockney word what, right? So W-O-T, what's all this then, right? Cockney is a dialect that's often associated with the East Enders of London, the dock workers, right? So if you look at a map of London, the East End is very, I won't say industrial. Industrial is probably the right word, but it's a dock, traditional seafaring community, and they have over many years developed kind of their own dialect and their own slang. This is where some of your Cockney rhyming slang comes from, but whoa, right, is just a phonetic spelling of the word what. So Wot Gorilla would be like, I kind of look at it as if Chester Thompson's nickname is Gorilla, then it's just kind of like a what gorilla, like where is he or who is he, what's that about?
Yeah,
is just more the expression, I guess. But it's in the Cockney, so that again is an expression of the Britishness of the album. You wouldn't just the other part of it is, I would say, maybe a symbolic adoption of Chester Thompson to the British, society. Chester has for a long, I mean, he's from Baltimore, right? He's
Yeah, yeah.
so he's an East Coast mid-Atlantic guy like you and me. So that's about how British he is. He's also black, right? So welcoming him to the Commonwealth, or more specifically, just kind of saying, hey, this guy, he's one of us, is kind of how I see that.
Well, they started to, he was included in in a wide variety of the publicity shots that they did for this album and beyond. So, but I never really connected those dots that this song that is just rhythmic in nature was, and maybe the name that they chose for it was somehow to serve as an introduction to this guy that would go on to be part of their live band for the next 40 years. But I know that at this time, they were really trying to figure out how to crack the code of America. And
Right.
how to really get embedded into the American radio, American sales, American concerts, tours, all of that. And they had certainly spent enough time in America, but they weren't quite to the point where they needed to be. And Chester Thompson was part of that. Releasing Your Own Special Way as a radio edit, specifically in the U.S., I think was a way to get the word out a little bit more. And so that's really interesting. And this focus on America, I think, is really interesting too, because it really ripped apart Phil Collins from his wife at the time. This idea that they had to keep going back to America, and that he was saying, like, look, this is who I am. This is who you married. This is what we do. It was just tour after tour after tour would take them so far away from home. It's hard for anybody to imagine what that would be like on a young, small family.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's so many things I want to say here, but just a couple of facts I've got to fire off real quick. The irony is that when Phil eventually gets divorced, his wife is going to move to Toronto. Right.
Yeah, it's just close by.
You couldn't have done that. You couldn't have done that before.
Yeah.
But just while we're on the subject of Chester Thompson, I feel personally that Phil Collins was a huge Chester Thompson fan and was the driving factor for Chester's, arrival with Genesis, and his career with Genesis. He's going to make it all the way up to the point that Phil Collins quits the band, right? And Chester is going to put his name in the hat to become the next full-time drummer. I mean, he wants to be a member of Genesis. Genesis, sans Phil Collins, is going to snub him, right? And they're going to move forward without him after 20 years of service, which just seems to me like a total slap in the face. But, there's probably business reasons and everything else. But long story short, it seems that Phil Collins is the big Chester Thompson fan. Interestingly, and here's just a completely random fact, Chester Thompson is going to have lots of success as a studio drummer and performing with really various acts, including he's going to perform on Peter Cetera and Amy Grant's smash hit, The Next Time I Fall in Love, which might have been the biggest hit he plays on.
Speaking of dentist office hits.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for that. Great. We'll do Your Own Special Way, followed by the Chester Thompson hit. Oh God, I didn't know that, but thank you for that. Wow. What I'm really curious about, because I was not expecting to talk about Chester Thompson tonight, but I'm glad that we are. What I don't know is really the timeline. I know Bill Bruford played drums on the Trick of the Tail tour, and they turned immediately around and went straight into the studio for this album. So I guess they knew coming off of the Bill Bruford tour that they were going to make a change, and they made a change, and they named a song after the guy that they changed it to. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how the timeline all came together. But I know Bruford was only there for the one tour, and then the tour that ultimately they recorded Seconds Out for was with Chester Thompson, and it was Chester Thompson and Steve Hackett before Daryl Sturmer came in and kind of filled that lead guitar role. So, but anyway,
I think the answer there may lie in the fact that these are Phil Collins compositions, and Phil is infamous for his kind of tricky naming and word usage. Mostly, songs like Abacab, Susudio. These are words that Phil just used as filler, right, during the writing process, and liked the way they sounded, and just could never find a better phrase or turn of something. Yeah. So he just went with Susudio, right? Right. So Susudio, but it should be, Gene's Big Bootio, something along those lines. It just, you could see the problem, right? I mean, that doesn't work. Yeah. Nope. So, Wot Gorilla to me, is maybe one of those, is that it's probably a jam session between, between Phil. Oh, that even, if Phil and Chester were just jamming back and forth, and at some point or another, he was just like, whoa! Gorilla.
That's probably it. They actually, I have heard them talk about the first time they played together, and it just, the rest of the band was like tuning up and getting ready, and the two of them just sat down and started jamming, and they immediately felt symbiotic. And so, yeah, I could see that maybe being the case, but that's cool. I'm gonna re-look at that timeline and just figure it all out, because that's what I do.
Yeah. Well, the other funny thing of note is, just given the fact that this is a instrumental track, I would assume that Phil always played drums on it, right? Yeah. So to name it after the touring drummer who doesn't play on it ever is also kind of an interesting turn. So, very psychedelic intro here.
Yeah. Only like 3.5 minutes. I always see it as a song that needed to fill in the last bit of time on the vinyl on the first half.
And before somebody calls me on it, there's a huge amount of percussion on this song, which I assume Chester Thompson did play on tour. So.
I don't know if I've seen them play this live. I should look into that.
It's not a very long song. I mean, just a little over 3 minutes. Where would you slot this in,
What I want to focus on with you is, like, where is the Steve Hackett part? And because Hackett, actually, we know he's gotten really good at making his guitar at times sound like the keyboards, but I understand a big part of the controversy here is that they pulled back the guitar part, and when they were producing it, they took him down a notch. So is that all Tony Banks there, or is there some Tony Banks?
That's all Tony Banks, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think you can hear Steve in the background there.
Yeah.
Right there on those little swells.
Yeah, he's got this like wah-wah thing going on, right?
Wow, it's a volume pedal, I think,
Yeah.
and it's swelling.
I would love to hear a version with that guitar part being much more in the foreground.
I imagine Steve probably played this with the intent of it being more of a duet between him and Tony, and the final mix has it as just kind of background accompaniment.
Yeah.
Which, so just based on the way he's playing there, right there you can hear him, almost like he's right there. He's definitely responding to what Tony's playing.
And these are the 2007 mixes that we're listening to. I don't have access to the earlier tapes, but I know it was a point of frustration for Steve that not only did they choose Wot Gorilla over Please Don't Touch, but when they got into the mixing room, they mixed him down.
Well, that song to me plays like some pure Alan Parsons Project stuff, right? When you get into if you take the acid jazz and everything else that we've talked about, the Weather Report and Brand X and everything out of it, just the production and what they're after is very Parsonsy, which I find interesting as well because I'm a huge fan of Alan Parsons.
Yeah, yeah, me too. All right, well, let's listen to Please Don't Touch. But so this is from 1978's album of the same name. I don't know. Two key things to listen to here. One is, can you picture this song being part of the Wind and Wuthering mix? Right? If you're one of the four guys and you get to choose between two songs,
Right.
are you going to pick this one?
Yeah.
And then two, I think, is Phil Collins just said, he had trouble finding the groove for this one. And I think he just preferred Wot Gorilla. So they ultimately went with that for, probably a pretty strong position from the drummer who couldn't quite get it. So I would love, as we listen to this, to see if you can feel the groove, if you can understand maybe where Phil was coming from. I don't know really anything about this song. I don't know who the session players were. I know that on the first album, Voyage of the Acolyte, the flute player, and there's some flute in the song, the flute player was Steve Hackett's brother, which I think is kind of cool because, he had his brother out there and he had a very prominent flute part throughout the Voyage of the Acolyte album. And so maybe it's the same guy playing the flute here, but I don't know. Do you get into the Please Don't Touch album? Have you? I know you and I have talked a lot about Voyage of the Acolyte, but is there anything about Please Don't Touch that you think is interesting?
I have checked this album out, and
sorry. Other than the, I think I sent to you Narnia. And I was like, where's this Genesis, Kansas mashup been all of our lives? Like, why didn't we know about this Genesis, Kansas mashup? But
that's true. No, it's fun. This is an interesting album. I think Steve Hackett is just a crazy guy, right? And he really gets out there. He does a lot of work on this album. He plays keys, he plays guitar, he plays the mellotron. Surprise, surprise. It is, in fact, his brother, John Hackett, on flute.
Okay, nice.
And, drum roll please, it is Chester Thompson on drums.
No way.
So,
are you serious?
Chester, I'm dead serious. Yeah, Chester managed to find the groove that Phil could not find. So there we are, right? So maybe that's let's go ahead and give it a listen.
Was that like a slap in your face? Like, hey, you're gonna choose Wot Gorilla over this? I'm gonna get your drummer and play it.
I'll take your drummer, and
that's great. Well,
it is tasty.
that is tasty, Steve. Touche. So a lot heavier than what we're hearing on Wind and Wuthering so far. Those bass pedals are pretty epic, if that's what that is.
Yeah, that's huge.
And he's got that, I mean, that acid guitar is working, right? Like, just the way it's very psychedelic in its sound. But they had all kind of famously said, like, hey, if you want 25% of the writing credits, then what you bring has to be great. You know, it's got to measure up with the other stuff. And I'm really on the fence when it comes to this song. Like, I think it's a great song, but it's a great song for his solo album, you know, and it's a great vibe for his solo work. I don't know if I'm getting Genesis vibes from this.
No, I'm 100% with you. It's a good song. It's definitely a nice piece of prog rock, right? It's just a little fuzzy, I think, compared to what we just heard in Wot Gorilla. Wot Gorilla is a far tighter piece of music.
Yeah, this one is not good for my ADD, right? Like, it just kind of voyages off into places that I'm not necessarily willing to go. But I love this album. I love this song.
Well, the song in its place on the album is fantastic, right? But that's how prog rock albums work, and that's one of the things. I don't know if oh, I love that line right there, though. I just love his little kind of high-pitched, almost piccolo-like guitar work. So nice. But this part right here doesn't vibe for me, right? That's 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3. So that feel very different. It's broken, right, compared to the feel of Wot Gorilla, which is almost like a straight acid jazz breakbeat, right? But it's not. It's a continuous breakbeat. This one has just a weird stop-startiness that, quite frankly, gives me anxiety.
Yeah, it's a little stressful. And the flute was there while you were talking. I'm not sure if the flute is jamming along with this part or not, but the flute was definitely there from his brother John. That's actually the next song. I didn't cut it soon enough, but it goes immediately into the next song. And I have come to really appreciate that from the Hackett albums, is just how experimental and fun they are, and how they're meant for vinyl, to kind of go from one song into the next. So
yeah, and that's Steve's influence really in the production of those albums. Just given the fact that he is, well, really he's a producer on this album, but one of the reasons you do a solo album is so you have that influence, right? And you get to show, this is my music. It's not, insert producer here, Phil Spector, or, whoever it might be. It's not their sound. This is my sound. And Steve's sound is definitely wacky. And it's one of the, the moving away from the wackiness, and that word specifically, wackiness, is one of the cited reasons Steve left the band, right? So you hear it here. Here's a wacky song, and I think the band at this point is kind of saying we are moving in a different direction.
Yeah.
You know, and it is going to be less wacky, and I mean, we see that.
Yeah.
The albums are going to become more and more commercial from this point forward. And when I say commercial, I mean I you know, they're going to be groundbreaking. They're gonna innovate, but they're going to be geared more towards that radio listener than the vinyl listener of the '60s.
Yes,
and that's the big difference.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah, they're the only progressive rock band that actually progressed.
I love that. I love that saying about them. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a quote. I remember hearing that on a Genesis documentary I watched, like right when I first started getting into the old stuff. And I think about that quote like every single day. that they're the only progressive rock band that really progressed. So good on them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
So this was kind of the Hackett episode, and in some ways it's kind of our farewell to Hackett, because I don't know how much we're going to talk about his contributions as we move forward, but the guy on the last two albums, right? I mean, Entangled, Blood on the Rooftops, he had a lot to do with 11th Earl Lamar. I'm sure I'm missing, you know, several of his significant contributions along the way. You know, he's ever present on these two albums, and he goes on tour and then chooses to leave. And the guys were a little bit miffed, you know. They were like, he didn't need to leave, and we were kind of surprised why he did leave. But he went on to become, quite frankly, like the flag bearer for Genesis. I mean, he's playing more Genesis songs than any of these guys.
Well, you got to make a living.
Yeah. I mean, he's on tour constantly doing Genesis Revisited. He's been in my hometown twice, and I'm such an idiot. I keep finding out that he was here like a day or two after he's gone. And so I need to just make sure I set alerts and alarms for that for the next time he comes around. But more power to him. I mean, he's probably in his late 70s, early 80s at this point, right?
Yeah, and he's getting around.
Yeah.
We need to put a bell on that guy.
yeah. But I would love to go see him and just hear Firth of Fifth, you know, once from the master himself. You know, his contributions are certainly clear. I think a lot of the fans that are just ride or die with Steve, a lot of them consider this to be the last great Genesis album. I think you and I have kind of overtly stated there's the best is yet to come. There's more to come.
Yeah,
I think
more to come.
I think they have done a really good job here of navigating the changes and the challenges that have come their way. To that end, I was listening to it's a brand new interview with Anthony Phillips, and it's on YouTube, and he talks about his friendship with Steve Hackett and how he was Steve would share things with him in private that seemed right on to Anthony. And it was just a really interesting perspective to know that Anthony kind of dealt with some of the strong personalities that were in the band, and the fact that this was a band of 5 composers and Steve was dealing with a band of 4 composers, and they were all just trying to get in, and it was tough for everybody. And, you know, obviously Anthony had left years before that, but it was interesting just to listen to the fact that he had a relationship kind of ongoing with Steve, and they haven't talked in a few years, but he wanted to make it a point to correct that and keep their friendship up and going strong.
Yeah, and as I look at all of this, really, and I put my musician hat on, and I kind of reflect on some of my own experience, one thing I know for sure is it's very hard to be a lead guitar player in a band with a solid lead keyboard player.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's always friction between the two. It comes from just the strong voices, right? There's a reason Destiny's Child isn't still a thing. I don't know. Is Destiny's Child still a thing?
I think it's a decent reference, albeit surprising.
Right. Well, it's just you have such dominant voices. At some point or another, they can't coexist, right? It's and you have to find your own space. And that's part of it.
I just like that you chose Destiny's Child instead of, like, I don't know, the Beatles, what, One Direction.
Well, I think the
NSYNC.
the Beatles broke up for they broke up for different reasons.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's
it's
fair.
not
That's fair.
it's not that they kind of outgrew the partnership that put them on the map, and that's the thing. You have to all of this for these guys is a navigation of the music industry, which is a waking bitch, particularly in 1976. Right? It's completely centrally controlled by record labels. And if you're an artist, you have hardly any power, right? So if you're coming from a band like Genesis, that gives you leverage. And I feel like that's important, right? That ultimately, the songs that are being performed here, and if you look at this, if you were Steve Hackett and you listen to this album right after it came out, let's say it's before you went on tour, but you've got the master and you've listened to this album, and then you go back and you listen to any of your previous, particularly something like Giant Hogweed, right? You're going to be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I've grown with this band, but where am I?
Right.
Where am I
Right.
in here? And it is certainly maturing of the sound, and it sounds fantastic, but it's a fair question as an individual. And that's when I put my musician hat on, I'm like, you're right, Steve.
Yeah.
Go get him, killer.
Yeah.
I mean, this to me though is just kind of that purest form of breakup.
Yeah.
It had to happen.
Well,
and
I love that we touched on the relationship between Steve and Phil, because when Steve he had just finished telling Tony and Mike that he was going to leave the band, and he walked out of the mixing studio where they were putting together the mix for the Seconds Out album that was the live show, and he bumped into Phil on the street, and he was getting into his taxi, and Phil was like, well, why don't we share a taxi, or I can ride with you, or whatever. And he didn't tell Phil that he was leaving the band. And Phil goes in and sees the other guys, and Steve had just told him, like, hey, we'll talk later. Like, I'll call you later, we'll talk. And Phil goes in and sees the other guys, and the other guys are like, Steve didn't tell you? He just quit the band. and Steve later told Phil, he was like, I didn't get in a cab with you because you were the one person who could have talked me into staying. And he knew, like, he was just so convicted that it was his time to just kind of, like, go. But when you think about Phil and everything we know about Phil, and just the fact that, like, he's Uncle Phil, that, he just, he needed to create that separation from him as well, because he was worried that Phil was going to talk him out of what he had just done.
That's what a great story. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Not heard that one.
Yeah.
But Yeah, you got to commit. And once you've ripped the Band-Aid off, I guess it's all in.
Well, and he went all in, and he did just fine. I mean, he had Spectral Mornings. He has this tour that he's been on. I mean, obviously, Voyage of the Acolyte, Please Don't Touch. Spectral Mornings was probably his biggest. I don't know his catalog all that well, but I am excited to. You and I are actually going to see each other next week, so I'm pretty excited about that. Maybe we'll listen to some Voyage of the Acolyte together.
100%, yeah. We'll give that a whole whirl.
All right, well, still some stuff to get through on Wind Wuthering. All very good stuff. I'm excited to go through a couple of the other tracks and then get into kind of the grand finale and what the finale means in terms of this truly being a pretty damn English album. And we'll do that. We probably won't do an episode next week because we'll be together. But we'll be right back right away. And you all can mourn the loss of Steve Hackett from Genesis over the next few weeks until we come back with a couple more songs that feature him. And then we'll ultimately say our goodbye as we continue our way on this Genesis journey.
Sounds like fun. I'm looking forward to it, brother.
It's fun because it's all it's kind of all laid out before us, right? It's easy to figure out where to go from here.
Not a hard tale to tell.
But we'll still surprise the listeners. So thank you for listening. If you've got any comments, questions, we love to hear from you. If you heard anything that we got exactly right, let us know. More importantly, if you heard anything we got wrong, let us know. We don't care, but let us know. And we'll do this again soon. See you, Jake.
Looking forward to it, Jared. Talk to you
Bye.
soon.
Mild Mannered Supermen, Mild Mannered Supermen.